Good Morning Liberty.
Well, what is up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Good Morning Liberty. My name is Nate Thurston. Across from me is Mr. Charles Chuck Thompson. How's it going this beautiful Monday after Easter?
Happy Easter.
Happy belated Easter to you.
He is risen, and the Pope has not.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to make light of it. What are you laughing for?
You should. As I said beforehand,
I thought you were against death.
I think it was a good trade.
It's yeah.
As I said before.
I thought you were against death.
I am. I'm against. Well, I've always said I'm against death, except for like super old people of natural causes, like people have to die, or we just become way too overpopulated. So if it's like a natural, super old, that's fine. You got to go sometime, and if you make it to the age of 88, I think.
Yeah, 88.
88's a lot of years.
That's a decent amount of time.
It's quite a lot of years. I had gone back and forth on whether or not we were going to talk too much about the Pope because I didn't want to be offensive to people. There's a lot of Catholics out there. But I don't understand the whole Pope thing. I'll just be 100% honest with you. I don't get it.
He's the president.
He's the president
of the Catholic
Catholics.
Church. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Worldwide.
So that kind of means that makes me more against it.
Yeah.
So
he's the worldwide
president of Catholicism, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. The things I've seen from the Pope over the years have not been good.
Yeah.
They've just not been very good.
Do you think the gayness died?
Did the wokeness die with him?
Did the wokeness go up?
Might have died with him. Maybe some of the socialism died with him also. Because he's had some real stupid stuff to say about wealth and capitalism and markets.
Him or whoever was running.
Whoever runs his. That's
his
right.
X.
I already forgot that joke.
Yeah. we don't know.
I said we weren't going to talk bad about the Pope, but we were going to talk really bad about whoever runs his Twitter.
Yeah.
That's who we were going to critique.
Or their Twitter. We don't even know.
Yeah.
So.
So yeah, there's been a lot. I did pull up a few things, but I don't. Is it right to do on the day of to talk about all these stupid things that the guy said?
I mean,
or should you wait a day? They always say not to politicize stuff, right after the fact.
I don't know if it's politicizing. It's just, he put it out there.
He did put it. I mean, he politicized it.
Yeah.
This is on him.
Yes. I couldn't agree more.
So like this article right here from The Nation, which says the Pope who decried the savage inequalities of billionaire class capitalism. That is a great representation of all the reasons I have nothing nice to say right now.
Meanwhile, the dowry of the Catholic Church probably sits in the trillions.
He talked negatively about walls, and then you're like, well, Vatican's got some walls, pretty sure. Some walls around there. I get it. You got to keep it safe and all that. I guess that applies to the Vatican, and not so much like where other people live or anything. But yeah, he said a lot of bad stuff about economics and inequality that just show a lack of understanding about how we got the great life that we have right now, sort of a total misunderstanding.
By the way, it's hard to pinpoint, but the global wealth of the Catholic Church estimates range from $73 to $265 billion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So maybe he's talking about billionaires because he knows a thing or two.
Yeah, he knows some billionaires. Yeah.
That's
Pope Francis, who died Monday at age 88, used his dozen years as the head of the Catholic Church and arguably the most prominent religious leader in the world to advocate for peace, especially in the Middle East. I'm a fan of peace in the Middle East.
That's a good thing.
That's fine. Yeah. Let's see. For bold responses to the climate crisis.
Dumb.
Okay.
That's dumb.
I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure he's no climate expert.
That's
okay. He should not have been talking on that stuff.
That's according to Douglas Murray.
So,
yeah.
For humane treatment of refugees, I think you should treat refugees humanely. You know what you could do first?
I think you should treat humans humanely.
Yeah, I'll go a step further. I think you should not do things to create refugees. I think that maybe goes along with the whole peace in the Middle East thing, and so that's okay. And for responsible uses of increasingly out of control technologies. Okay. All right.
Yep.
With a consistency that distinguished him from the corporate and political elites of his time for economic justice. So
I like the way they worded that, economic justice.
There's this thing that several articles point to where he laid out some of these topics in a super boring way right here. let's just say that.
I'll tell you what,
this is not a compelling website.
The Catholic Church does struggle to get young people. So,
just as the commandment "thou shalt not kill" sets a clear limit in order to safeguard the value of human life today, we also have to say "thou shalt not" to an economy of exclusion and inequality. Such an economy kills. How can it be that it is not a news item when an elderly homeless person dies of exposure, but it is news when the stock market loses 2 points? This is a case of exclusion. Can we continue to stand by when food is thrown away while people are starving? This is a case of inequality. Today, everything comes under the laws of competition and the survival of the fittest, where the powerful feed upon the powerless. As a consequence, masses of people find themselves excluded and marginalized, without work, without possibilities, without any means of escape. So a lot of the things I've seen him talk about before, that it acts as if wealth and all of this money that we're worried about being unequal would just exist if it were not for the system, say, of free market competition or of markets or whatever, that he thinks that without those things would just still exist, and that we should do a better job spreading those things around without ever acknowledging the fact that that is how that wealth, which is unequal, was created in the first place. And so it's like a very...
He's clearly not an expert on history.
No, or economics.
Yeah.
And so we shouldn't be talking about that either.
And look, the Catholic,
that's a joke.
The Catholic Church does do a lot, I will say. I mean, they have a lot of charities and entities where they do help people, and I think that is a good thing. However, they have a vast amount of wealth that they could take, like they could distribute that first before they talk about anyone else's wealth.
Well, they're using that wealth in order to have a big enough pulpit to tell other people to spread their wealth. You know?
Oh.
Yeah. You got it. Because if they used all of that, then they wouldn't be there to preach to anyone anymore.
It's harder.
So it's important for them to keep that. It's like in the same way that, of course, Bernie Sanders has to fly around on a private jet. How would he go to that event to talk to anyone? And if he wasn't getting paid enough money or making millions from books or whatever, like, how would he have the means to go and talk to all these people about how other people should do better things with all the money that they have?
That's right.
You know?
Exactly.
And yeah, so that's, not to just dig in too hard on this guy who just died, but I sure do
I'll tell you what, I don't know much about him.
I don't either.
Like as a person.
No, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
He could be a great guy.
And there's lots of things that happen in the Catholic Church that are just not good. But I mean, that happens in,
those things were happening before he was the Pope,
yeah.
And
those things happen in non-denominational churches too.
All kinds of churches.
I go to a church where the former pastor, he was, he had to leave.
Our church back in our old hometown had a little issue with the pastor there too. That guy ended up having to leave too,
Dr. Whatever his name was.
It's a fruit.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Doesn't
rhyme
by
with
name.
anything.
No.
But I'm not going to say who it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not going to say his name.
Not going to say his name.
Anyhow, so yeah, we don't want to, let's not do the whole, Catholics and all the jokes he would normally make and all that. And
we're against death. So, I mean, anytime someone dies, it is sad. But I'll tell you what, his political opinions, his religious political opinions, just weren't economically sound.
Well, it's just, and he's out there, he's meeting with government officials all the time, and what do you think happens when you're preaching this way? What he's actually arguing for, even if he doesn't mean to be, what he's arguing for from his position is that the government should take more control and threaten more people with death if they don't give their money to someone else who didn't earn it or whatever, which is going to destroy the creation of the wealth in the first place. He's actually arguing for more government power and control in a lot of the stuff I've seen when it comes to climate or it comes to economics or whatever the case may be. And that's something that I don't think a church really should be arguing for, is for government officials to have more power to imprison you if you don't give them the proper amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Sad the guy died. Super sad. Yeah. That's
Are
a
you?
sad day.
Are you?
There are some people who are sad.
Okay.
I'm not one of them. Let's talk about a couple other things that happened over the weekend. The Supreme Court has temporarily paused the use of the Alien Enemies Act. There's not a whole lot we can say on this because they gave no reason at all. It was just an emergency order issued at midnight. Alito actually dissented, and he said, I didn't join the opinion because there was no reason for us to do this at midnight in an emergency order. But
I'm tired.
Yeah. He was like, I'm going back to bed. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. What'd you call me? What'd you call me for?
And so right now, the use of the Alien Enemies Act is temporarily paused, I think, while they're going to be considering this more. Remember, they still haven't ruled on the use of it. I did a lot of reading about the Alien Enemies Act. So it's something that honestly I disagree with, and it's been used in some really bad ways, of course. I will say, though, even the first use of the alien, when the law was signed, we weren't at war with anyone. It was a fear that we were about to go to war with the French over something. And it's so crazy. It happened 8 years after the Constitution was ratified. And they're already attacking, because it was the alien and sedition or whatever. So they're attacking free speech and essentially deporting foreign enemies at this time. And this was under John Adams. Thomas Jefferson did not like it at all. In fact, a quote from Thomas Jefferson that we're going to bring up today while we're talking about Douglas Murray was actually, I found it while I was reading about the Alien and Sedition Acts, and it was a quote about free speech from Thomas Jefferson, who did not agree with it at all, did not like it. But
he didn't like it one bit.
No. What I will say, though, is I'm not claiming that Trump is doing something unconstitutional by using it, because we weren't even at war at the time that they signed the thing and started using it. And it's a power that I'm not sure the government should have. In fact, I'm pretty sure they shouldn't, because that applies for most powers that the government has. But it hasn't been...
Well, the power of immigration lies with Congress. Mm-hmm. So... Mm-hmm. They're able to create laws.
Yeah, they can create laws.
Yes.
About this.
That's in I don't know the exact language, but I've read the Constitution a few times.
And this has been one that they haven't repealed. For all the people who hate this law, it has not been repealed. For it being used to imprison Japanese citizens, American citizens, for it to be used to do that kind of thing, still hasn't been repealed. I'm not seeing people push to repeal it right now, and I think that that's the argument that needs to be had, because from what I've read, Trump probably has this power. It doesn't mean that I agree with it, and I definitely do not agree, as we've said so many times now, I don't agree with shipping people directly to a prison. I think that is a very different thing, especially if you are going to skip due process or go extremely light on the due process. I think shipping them to a prison that they may never be able to get out of is a super dangerous thing to do, especially if you see that they haven't committed any crimes in your country, except for the illegal immigration, but they haven't committed any crimes where there are immediate victims for their violent crimes. I think shipping people directly to a prison is a bad move.
It's a bad precedent.
I don't like that.
For sure.
And then you got to ask whether or not you want the president to have this power to be doing this, because guess what? He has already joked around about the idea of sending Americans to this prison in El Salvador. And that's the kind of thing that I'd be scared of if there were someone else in charge who decided that I was a member of a domestic terrorist organization who hates feds, something like that. That would be very dangerous to me. And so you always got to ask, would you like your opponents, your ideological opponents, to have this power and use it? And the answer most of the time is no. And so I don't want people that I tend to agree with sometimes to have it either.
Yeah. By the way, I can point people to the right place.
For what?
Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives Congress the power over naturalization, which is how people become citizens, essentially immigration. So a uniform rule of naturalization. And, there wasn't really much wasn't happening until the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which I haven't read up on that one.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. They just didn't want. We've been hating on China since 1882.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what Trump's going back to.
Jesse, now Jesse Kelly says, ignore the Supreme Court, arrest anyone who tries to enforce this, dissolve the Supreme Court entirely if they push. You can deport foreigners or you don't have a country anymore. There are no good choices now. And as the community note says, the Supreme Court did not rule that the government can't deport people. It just said that they can't use the Alien Enemies Act to just round people up and put them on a plane and take them out, that there has to be some due process. And actually, they didn't even fully rule that. They just blocked its use temporarily, and they're going to be considering this still. Mm-hmm. So we don't know for sure what they're ruling on the use of this. I think they're probably going to say that he can use this. I'm just saying, from the instances I've seen and even the situation we were in. I think
they're going to say there has to be due process, though.
Yeah, probably.
See, and this is the thing that I think is ultimately scary for liberty. Like, due process is a miracle that we got it. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, for all of human history, someone like the king could just accuse you of doing something bad and then off with your head, or they do something, they would torture you, like whatever. Mm-hmm. You didn't have a right to discovery.
Yeah,
you didn't have a right to try to prove your innocence at all. I mean,
you were guilty until proven innocent. Actually, you were just guilty.
You were just guilty.
If they said you were guilty.
Even if you had evidence that you weren't even there.
No such thing.
It doesn't matter.
No.
And so I think you should be worried. I'm not saying what Trump is doing is necessarily wrong, but I think you should be worried when something like this might start to erode, when it becomes to liberty.
You always have to ask what's next, and what if using this, what's it going to look like 10, 15 years down the road of continuing to do this? And I understand to be as charitable as possible, like what J.D. Vance was saying and what you kind of said. Listen, they got like 20 million people that might be in the country illegally. Let's say it's 10. Let's say it's 10 million people that they want to deport.
Let's say it's 1 million.
Yeah. I understand that there is a bit of an issue as far as the actual amount of courts and judges and the amount of time that it will take to do this. And then you have issues like, well, that person's home country doesn't want to take them. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do about that? Drop them off on an island somewhere? I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what you do. I still think we have the best idea, which is you take them back across the border where they crossed. You've got no responsibility past that. I don't understand. The border's closed down. Drop them off on the other side of it. Your responsibility is over at that point.
That's it.
Is Mexico's one that let them through there, So, we let them through our actual border, but the thing. I think your responsibility is over at that time. But I do understand that there's a lot of people, and due process is going to be tough. And I think that if you're a believer in the idea that we should have a immigration system and not a completely open border, and that we do have laws, those laws weren't followed, and technically probably some criminal things done by the Biden administration in allowing this many people to come into the country. We are in a predicament right now if you want to get rid of these people.
Now, I do think we could maybe pull back the reins on a little bit of decorum, that you have to have like in court. So you could just open up like some common sense courtrooms, and be like, hey, are you here illegally? C. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, then you shouldn't be here anymore. Next.
So, I will still say, I'm trying to just talk about this from the standpoint of like the Trump administration and what I think their goal is. But where I come down personally, it is still different from where a lot of people are. If you're someone who has never committed a crime against anyone, I still think that, honestly, really, there's no victim, no crime. And I think that our biggest issue here is the welfare system, is the fact that people can take money from me and give it to others. And adding more people into that mix is a recipe for a disaster. But I don't really care that these people are here any more than I would care if there was a massive amount of new births occurring in America. Like, I feel like almost the same argument could be made for setting laws on the amount of new children you could have.
Unless it was your wife.
Because what we're saying is, well, we have, that'd be...
If it was your wife.
That's shut it down.
Yeah.
Completely shut it down. It's illegal.
Call the
day
law.
one. But I'm like, okay, if the problem is too many people here and we have welfare and so that's dangerous, I'm like, well, isn't that the same kind of argument you can make for people having kids? You know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're talking about population control, really is what you're talking about. And so those arguments even start to fall apart for me.
Look, I can fix this whole thing for J.D. Vance, okay?
Do it.
Look, you could probably, well, first of all, the first thing you do is you hire Chick-fil-A.
Immediately.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then you just drive through these immigrants, you know?
Yeah.
And they could probably process about 1 million people an hour and give them a chicken sandwich and say, my pleasure.
Yeah.
As
So our problem right now is that we're waiting on people to come to the window first.
Yes.
And you got to go out through the line.
Yeah.
While people are in the line.
They could get their
That
iPads out.
Go faster.
And
I got you.
I mean, they could just zip all the people through.
No, it's a good idea.
Immigration. That's, Chick-fil-A style court.
I like that.
And I think everyone, you could, within 20 days, process 20 million people.
Yeah.
And J.D. Vance's problem is solved.
Just one giant Chick-fil-A day.
People have Chick-fil-A due process.
Yeah.
I think that would work.
If I could use this idea of, would you like it if your opponents used it at the same time? I want to talk about one more thing before we do a little bit of Douglas Murray conversation. And that has to do with...
And what you're saying, by the way, if you would like it if other people would do it. Like, imagine if Kamala Harris was president and was deporting domestic terrorists to El Salvador.
Yeah.
And remember, all you anti-vaxxers, you're domestic terrorists.
Yeah.
Okay?
I mean, imagine if the Jan 6ers were just sent to El Salvador instead.
A bunch of the Jan 6ers didn't even have real due process.
I've seen that a lot.
They weren't even allowed to present evidence of their innocence.
It's sort of a rubber stamp. Were you there? Okay, all right. Well, you're screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
it kind of happened. So like you just have to think about this. You know, whether you love Trump or hate Trump or whatever, this is all a principled liberty standpoint.
Yeah.
And you like everything's all fine and good until it happens to you or someone you know. And so then what?
We got to be careful with any of these uses that could be used against you in the future. And here's an annoying one. Like Trump is going full on against the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. Now listen, we're no fans of the Federal Reserve. This here is a libertarian podcast. Okay, we're not fans.
Can Trump just dissolve it?
No,
he can't.
He can't.
No.
It has yet to be seen whether or not he can actually fire Jerome Powell because he has removed a couple people from something like the National Labor Relations Board, some independent agencies. The Fed is an independent agency. And in my opinion, that's a good thing. So what I want you to imagine, well, first off, it's not as if Donald Trump just hates the Federal Reserve and that's what he's mad about. It's not like he doesn't like the fact that they devalue our currency and that they've led to like a 99% devaluation of our currency and they create these massive boom and bust cycles over time. That's not what Donald Trump is worried about. In fact, it's the opposite. Right now, Trump is mad because Jerome Powell is not lowering the interest rates. So here's what I would like to ask you, because he's talking about getting rid of Jerome Powell. And Jerome Powell said that they're not going to be intimidated by politics. They're not going to pay attention. Here's the problem. What would you say if Joe Biden had decided that we needed to get rid of Jerome Powell because he didn't like the fact that Jerome Powell was raising interest rates in 2022?
Mm-hmm.
Would you be like, oh, he can't do that? The Federal Reserve is independent. And of course, the Federal Reserve needs to be raising interest rates right now. That's what people would be saying. Well, we have a new president now, but this president is saying, well, the rates have to go down. This is ridiculous. They still have the rates. Europe's been lowering their rates, as if that's a great reason to lower your rates.
I'm so tired of that argument.
You know, Europe's been lowering their rates, and so we need to lower our rates as well.
Modern society that's not lowering their rates right now? Are we the only industrialized?
Yeah, maybe. And here's the deal. Our rates are, I was going to say they're pretty high historically. In recent memory, they're high compared to where they have been. They're not super high historically. But they probably need to stick around where they are because we're about to get probably the effects from a lot of tariffs. which is going to be inflationary. And the Fed's main job, they have a dual mandate. And so they are trying to keep inflation down. And their other dual mandate is maximum employment. And I don't even think that should be part of the mandate. I think, well, okay, I don't think they should exist. But the next thing is I think they should just worry about what inflation is.
Well, maximum employment is maximum
employment.
Tax revenue.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
That's why the mandate exists.
And so right now we have
keep them treasuries flowing.
We have a president who wants us to loosen our monetary policy and devalue our currency more because the interest rates are high, the bond rates are high right now, and they need to refinance the debt, and they want the rates all to go down at the moment. You know what I had to say about that? Cut the freaking deficit. You know, no one's approaching this at the point of where we need to cut the deficit. We need to cut spending. They're all trying to figure out ways that we can game the system without making cuts all the time. We need to make cuts. And no one seems to be interested. By no one, I mean almost no one seems to be interested in doing that. And I do not like the idea that a president would just be able to essentially decide that the interest rates need to be lower now. That's dangerous. What do you think Biden or his people would have done during COVID?
It's dangerous enough having the Fed.
Yeah, that's already bad enough.
Yeah.
But if we allow this to be pressured by politicians, which I'm sure they have a little bit of pressure. I mean, they do have terms, and then they have to get, you gotta appoint them again, and so there's a little bit of political pressure, I'm sure. But not so much that you're worried about getting fired in the middle of your term if you don't lower the interest rate. That's not good. And we would not like it if Democrats were doing the different thing. What do you think? What do you think people like Bernie Sanders or President AOC is going to want to do? You think she's going to want high interest rates where they need to be, or interest rates down at 0 or below 0, which is what some of these other countries have done? They'll want it below, and so they'll just fire whoever the chair is.
Yeah, how are you going to get that Green
Put in
New
that
Deal?
person who wants to go negative interest rates. How about we just do that? It's a terrible idea. Absolutely dog crap idea from Trump, and it's annoying. And everyone, if the shoe was on the other turntable, they would understand that. Okay. Yeah. All right. Next thing is Douglas Murray. Have you heard of him?
No. Who's this guy?
He is a Israel-Ukraine expert.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad we can listen to an expert.
So we can cite him. You know what's great is that we don't actually have to go there. We could just cite what he's saying, and we'd be right about it. But if you cite anyone else who's been there, who has a different opinion, you don't need to do that, But we can cite him if we want to do that. So Douglas Murray is still out there making the rounds. Actually, he's making a lot of rounds right now.
And all of his friends are making rounds.
Yeah. He got a tweet from Trump telling people to go buy his book.
Yeah.
I saw his book was #1 on some chart. I don't know. He posted about that this morning. And
saw Mark Levin. When Destiny posts out your article.
Destiny's out there.
Yeah. Oh man.
So
it's like it's like this concerted, coordinated effort now
to push war.
To push war, push Murray.
Where the experts, the old experts at these, there was a thing called the IDW, the intellectual dark web, and these really cool people, these smart people came out, and they were speaking out finally against the woke nonsense. It's kind of their big thing, and what I notice now is that almost all of them. They still like to be experts on stuff, and they still like to push experts. It's just different experts that they want to push on things. And I almost feel like where the left had their experts on COVID or on wokeness or white fragility or whatever, it's almost like the right is doing their version, only they've figured out that they need that for war because they want to push war all the time. And so we need to make sure that we close off all these other people's opinions, because that's dangerous. And we need to just have these warmonger experts out there talking about stuff. And it'd be dangerous to not have those people, And so that's really one thing that I'm noticing right now. I've got some clips.
Might as well get Dick Cheney's opinion.
Yeah. Well, he's an expert.
He's an expert.
I mean, how could he not be? There was he was on Bill Maher, which is great because I love the symmetry here. Bill Maher is a comedian. But Bill Maher agrees with him on these things, on
Mhm.
some things, not all the stuff. And so therefore, there's no need to go and argue with Bill Maher about anything.
Yeah.
Because this comedian has got the right opinions on these things. You see how that works?
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
I didn't even catch that, honestly.
pretty great.
Until you just said it.
Here's this clip that's been going around.
People like us do, who recognize this as a big problem on the left, but also recognize the horrible stuff that's going on the right. I mean, you were on Joe Rogan a couple of days ago, a week ago, something like that. It got a lot of press. And I'm glad you said what you said, which is, I like Joe, but he has on people who entertain these crazy conspiracy theories and doesn't really push back on them. It's okay to have, I'm a free speech absolutist pretty much, but there seems to be no pushback on this. And of course, what's going on in this country, what we're going to probably be talking about here on the panel in a minute, this kind of encroaching fascism. I mean, I was using the term slow-moving coup before he got elected the first time.
Well, the right, clearly, I mean, it's always interesting to see what happens at the point of victory. What do you do with your victory? And if those people on the American right who are now in the ascendant, if they decide that they want to use their point of victory to, for instance, lie about the origins of the Russia-Ukraine war, or lie about the nature of Hamas, or lie about the state of Israel, or lie about history. I mean, the reason I did this pushback was, I mean, you just have to. I mean, you just have to, in my view. It's basic social hygiene. If you've got somebody who's coming along who pretends to be a historian, who then can always do the thing of saying, oh, I actually don't call myself a historian. It's just other people I allow to call me a historian. I'm not a car mechanic, but if I kept on being introduced as a car mechanic, I would say, oh, no, you got the wrong guy. So they don't mind it. They don't mind it. They have this slip out. These people that I was trying to call out on Joe's show, they are doing things like Hitler wasn't that much of an anti-Semite. Main problem in the 20th century was Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was the warmonger. Adolf Hitler wanted peace. And I just, look, it's a matter of social hygiene. Don't feed me this shit. And
it's so crazy because he talks about these people lying.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to summarize what their lies are. And he's lying.
Well, yeah.
About his summary.
Well, he also says he's never listened to them.
Yeah, yeah.
Like when he got asked about Daryl Cooper, he was like, yeah, I don't need to listen to that. I don't need to listen to this revisionist history. So he's actually summing up someone like Daryl Cooper in a couple tweets he's seen, or like one clip from Tucker Carlson's podcast. And listen, I'm no expert on Daryl Cooper at all. I did start listening to, there's one that people have been telling me to listen to for a while, and that's the Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem. Have you heard of that one? Mm-hmm. I don't know how many parts to the series there are. I'm in part 2 right now. It's like 10 years old, so it doesn't include any of the stuff that's going on right now. But I expected it to be a lot different in the first couple parts because...
No, he walks through like the whole history.
Dude,
the persecution of the Jews.
Dude, I came away after part 1. I was like, you know what? I kind of understand why the Jews felt like they needed to go to Israel. You know, this kind of crazy times out there, and it turns out there was a lot of really bad stuff going on. And he makes the most charitable case you could possibly hear for why. Of course, it made sense that they wanted to move back to their homeland, and even talks about how there were parts of the Zionists who didn't want to just create a state because they knew the people wouldn't like that, the people that were there, that they wanted to go there and grow the economy and build roads and stuff, and eventually they would just assimilate, into their culture and do it all peacefully and everything. And I came away so opposite of what I was I expected to just hate Jews after I listened to the first episode,
To just fill your brain with lies.
That's why I went there. Was expecting to do that. I needed some fuel for the fire. And whatever that fire that was burning from what I had heard Douglas Murray say about him was just extinguished immediately.
Yeah.
And so I would recommend that people go and listen to that. It's like
you would you?
I would.
Yeah, because
you're
you're a podcast.
Well, what I'm saying is don't take my word for it.
Yeah.
You should go and listen to it.
Oh, and don't take Douglas Murray's word for it, is what you're saying.
Don't take his for it, because he said on Joe Rogan's show that he had never listened to him before.
So how can he have an opinion about it? I thought, wait, you haven't been there.
He hasn't even been to the podcast channel.
You have.
Let alone the guy's studio.
I remember when Joe Rogan was like, yeah, he did like 30 hours. Like, it's like,
30 hours.
why would I?
30 hours.
Why would I need to listen to that?
Yeah.
You know, that's so wild.
No, I mean,
and the rounds that he's making, you know, like last night I was telling Nate, as I was scrolling Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, like there were so many posts now from like Mark Levin and Destiny and all of these like journalists and people who were all sharing, who's that actor? Michael Rappaport.
Yeah. I saw that video last night.
So he made a video about it, and they were all sharing that and saying how they never listened to Joe Rogan, but like Douglas Murray's right, basically. They don't listen to it either, but you know, Douglas Murray's right. And it's just like this slew of people that all probably seem to be on the payroll of whoever wants to go to war. So,
like I said, it's like the right is trotting out their expert class on why we must continue wars. And it's almost like we're gearing up for something else that's bigger, like a war with Iran. Mm-hmm. And it would be very dangerous if we had all of these questions concerning our partnership, our relationship with Israel, you know, if we try to get into a war with Iran. And so it's almost like they're trotting out their expert class to gear us up for something in the way that they geared up for going to war with Iraq and all that, which, by the way, Douglas Murray was in favor of. And it sort of is starting to feel like that. Like we are trying to get control of the narrative because the right, some of those people have realized that they've lost the narrative when it comes to war. And that's something that has been different. And that actually changed with Trump, honestly. That really, I mean, I know Ron Paul was out there as a Republican doing that thing, but Trump really super mainstreamed the idea that like Iraq was a mistake by calling out Jeb Bush on stage in the debates. And I think that some of these people have decided that is dangerous and they have to shut it down. And so they're trying to do this expert class elitism thing. And I mean, he keeps talking about how he's been there and how he's been to Israel and all that. And that's where it gets so laughable. And maybe it's more laughable for people like you and me. I'm not saying other people don't also know why it's laughable, but we've gone on the government-sponsored tours of the regions before. And it is a government-sponsored tour of a region, especially as someone going as a journalist. What do you think they're going to show you, man? Seriously. They know you're working on a book. What do you think they're going to show you? Yeah. So that part's ridiculous. So anyhow, Douglas Murray was on Sam Harris's podcast.
I haven't listened to this guy since
he
said it was okay to lie.
Yeah, we have clips.
Even though he wrote a book saying you shouldn't lie.
It's like, don't lie.
Yeah.
And then he was like, lie.
And he was like, no, lie, because you got to keep the fascists from being president.
Very important.
Didn't work, by the way.
So this clip I thought was interesting. It's sort of a longer clip. I'll try to let it play for a minute, but they're talking about this moment in the Rogan debate as well. And I think this, let me tell you, before we get too long-winded here, let me tell you why I think this is important. I really do think that free speech matters, and not just the government free speech, but for people on the right who have always pushed for free speech, I think what's really important about it is trusting that people can discern what's real and what's not real. And maybe we're losing that ability. I don't know. Or maybe we're getting new tools and it's going to make that ability even easier for. Maybe we're doing a better job than people in history have done. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I think that's...
Like, look, even if you get a large amount of people to believe something that's not true, like eventually the truth comes out. The antidote to that is just more free speech.
Yeah.
Like you dissent in things of public opinion to enough people hear it where they're like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. I can't believe I believed this thing for a while.
The thing that's so annoying about Douglas Murray is that if he is the expert on this, or he spent so much time in Israel and he just wrote a book about this thing, he should have gone on Joe Rogan and just destroyed Dave Smith. Why didn't he do it? I want him to do it if he can. Mm-hmm. I want to hear it. I want to hear it if he's got way better points to make. But instead he goes along this expert, and you haven't been there, and it's dangerous for all these voices and not having other voices out there. And
not even talking about the substance.
Yeah, no substance to the conversation. And a really good example of how this could have gone is, you know who Terrence Howard is, the actor?
That sounds familiar.
You'd know him if you saw him. So Terrence Howard went on Joe Rogan's show, and he's, I don't know if you call him a physicist or what. I'm sure professional physicists would not call him that. I'm sure if you called him out on something, he'd say, I'm just an actor. You know,
Yeah.
That's Terrence Howard. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
He goes on and explains these theories that he has on these things. And apparently, listen, I don't know. I'm not a physicist either. Apparently, he was very wrong on a bunch of things. And he tried to give this theory to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Neil deGrasse Tyson basically like wrote him off and just stopped acknowledging him or whatever, because apparently it was just fundamentally wrong. It's like if you started off your paper with like 2 + 2 = 0, basically not even showing that you couldn't add things, but that you didn't know what addition was. And that's essentially what some of the theories were from what I gather. So Eric Weinstein goes on there with Terrence Howard to very, very nicely explain to him all the ways that he was wrong about a bunch of stuff. He didn't go on there and just preach to him about how he wasn't a Harvard-educated physicist and all this, and how he hadn't spent
He's
all
just
the
an actor.
years in the lab, and he was an actor, and he should stick to acting, and should stop hiding behind the fact that he was an actor and he had no clue what he was talking about. He went on there and just very politely explained, like, this right here. And I mean, like, the nicest, and like, I felt awkward watching it because Eric Weinstein's like destroying the Terrence Howard's like foundation
Yeah.
but very nicely. And that is the way that, in my opinion, that you do it. And instead, Douglas Murray just goes the complete.
Well, and then it's good for the masses. Like,
Yeah.
you're able to hear that type of discourse. And what I think you got a good quote pulled up here, what Thomas Jefferson says here. He says, "The firmness with which the people have withstood the late abuses of the press, the discernment they have manifested between truth and falsehood, show that they may safely be trusted to hear everything true and false, and to form a correct judgment between them."
Now, you know what that was in response to?
Now, it may not happen overnight, by the way.
No.
It may take
No.
some time.
You could have some things happen because people read something and they believe it, you know. This is in response to the Alien and Sedition Acts. So I thought that was pretty funny. That's where I found that quote. I paraphrased it. Here's essentially, because you couldn't understand all that, 18th century speak that was going on right there. Here's what he said. He said, "I'm impressed you were able to call BS on the legacy media during COVID, and I trust that you will do the same with new media when applicable. So all the people complaining about Joe Rogan can shut the F up." I think that's exactly what Thomas Jefferson said.
That was in layman's terms.
Yes,
Yeah.
in layman's terms, that's
Yeah.
what he said. I think that that's such an important principle.
Because you can't be trusted to understand 18th century English.
No, I had to tell you what it
Yeah.
meant. Yeah.
Because you're an expert.
Well, it's here's how they talk about the expert class, and they make they give some great examples. Of course, you would want an expert when it comes to this, but we'll tell you how we feel about that here in a second.
But let's talk about expertise. So
Mhm.
I have some notes here because I find this it's all very clear in my mind, but I find that whenever I talk about this, I fail to track it through systematically enough for people to have their doubts removed. So the first point I think we need to make is that everyone acknowledges, whether they want to or not, everyone acknowledges the reality of expertise and its importance. And this is a point I think you've made before, and I've made it as well in response to the aftermath of your podcast with Joe, that, if you put someone in front of Joe who wants to talk about MMA as though they were an expert, as though they knew something, and they knew next to nothing, very, very quickly, Joe would recognize the problem there and begin to turn down the screws, and it would be excruciating, right? There's no way you can
Absolutely.
pretend to know about MMA
Yeah.
sitting in front of Joe Rogan when in fact you don't. Everyone, when they get on an airplane, wants their pilot to be a real pilot, not just, one who's LARPing as a pilot or who's self-taught, in a simulator they have at home. Unless they don't want to land the plane, right? In which case, unless they're jihadists, but let's leave that aside.
Yeah, if you go in for brain surgery and just before you're wheeled into the operating theater, comic Dave Smith appears and says, "I'm doing the task."
Yeah. I'm not an expert, but
I never claimed to be an expert, but I am carrying out the operation.
yes, yeah. I've got a free 4 hours. I'll be inside your head. Okay, so there is just simply indisputable that there's in any domain that matters, and certainly in any domain that purports to be in touch with reality, any side of it, whether it's journalism, history, science, or just how to get things done, just physically, whether you're a plumber or not a plumber, right? The difference between knowing something or knowing nearly everything and knowing nothing is extraordinary, and it matters insofar as the topic matters.
Okay, pause there. Real quick.
And so in that context, you can see that.
So I first want to say that they're a bit better at analogies than most leftists.
Yeah, no, they're doing a good job.
Yes.
Pretty good.
But my question is, okay, what makes you an expert on history?
Exactly.
Like, okay, brain surgery, sure. Although we've seen Dr. Death, and there are people. They do call medicine a practice, by the way.
Yeah. Because
even if they are experts, there's no guarantee they're going to fix you correctly.
Dr. Death was an expert.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Anyway, what I'm saying is they're making, like pilots, whatever, they're making decent analogies, although,
well, they're not actually that great analogies. I mean,
I'm saying decent.
Yeah.
Better than what most leftists. But my question is, though, like, what denotes an expert on history? Like, even if Dave Smith claims not to be an expert, Dave Smith is pretty well read on like the issues of foreign policy and things of that nature. Scott Horton even more so. You can consider Scott Horton like a journalist, some guy he's written books and have studied these types of things. And even among historians themselves, there's disagreements.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take Christianity, for example, Sam Harris. Like, there are many historians who take the 547 eyewitness accounts of Jesus and make it where it's historically accurate that he was a real person who actually died on a cross and was risen. It is Easter, after all, this weekend.
Yeah.
And there are other historians, Sam Harris would probably agree with them, that it's all mythology. Yeah. And it's like, so who's the expert there?
The problem with the examples, the analogies they're using, is that they're using things, as I was telling you earlier, where there is an objective way to do a physical thing, like flying a plane or something like that. Like, you would like an expert, and there is an objective way that you make the plane fly, and you can take off, and you can land. And there's like a rule book, a list of things you can put down.
There's an objective way to drill into someone's skull.
You can name all the parts of someone's brain or of someone's body, or in biology, you can list out all of the things that exist in a human body. And so there are objective things that they're talking about in this physical world, all these examples that they give. But what about when it comes to a war? Like, how are you an expert on an ongoing war that is happening right now? What does that mean? What does that even mean to be an expert on that war? Especially if you're only educated by one side of the people that are in that war, one side of the conflict. How are you an expert in that? There's other sides, and there's not even just this conflict. There's 100 years of history that happened before that. There's 1,000 years of history that happened before that. Are you taking any of that into account when you talk about October 7th or whatever? Like, do you ever factor in is this stolen land? Is it not stolen land? Like, do people just give up land because the UN said so or whatever, or do they fight for it forever? Like, I watched Yellowstone, and turns out that was about the land. There's a whole series about it, and we're like, the land.
They could have called it land.
Yeah.
But they called it Yellowstone.
And so, like, how do you never bring that into the context at all? Or were there other things that the Israelis have done in the past that made people upset? And then things that, of course, Hamas or Palestinians or people in Gaza have done that made Israel upset. There's all sorts of stuff. So how do you even become an expert in a war? What does that even mean? And this is a guy who thought it was a good idea for us to go to war with Iraq. This is a guy who said he thought Ukraine was going to beat Russia. And so what makes someone an expert? in a war. That doesn't make any sense. It's not the same thing as being an expert plumber, which even as someone in the group made the case, you don't even have to be an expert plumber. I'll tell you what, I have plumbed, just like I think Jake said in the group, I'm pretty sure. I've done a lot of plumbing, whole lot of plumbing. And only expertise I have is that I watched the YouTube video on how to do it beforehand every single time.
Mm-hmm.
But I could just about plumb every single thing in your house for you and do it right. I've never been called back for any problems, but I'm not.
Change your phone number.
Yeah. That's probably what happened. No, it's very possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, this argument doesn't really. Well, they are making some pretty good analogies when it comes. Of course, we want expertise when it comes to things, but also, and they're going to make. I don't know how long of this clip we're going to have time to play today. They are actually going to sort of steelman their case and they're going to bring up COVID. They're going to bring up Galileo. They're going to bring up, of course, the 99% of the experts thought that the sun revolved around the earth or whatever people used to think. And then some crazy person went on Joe Rogan's podcast and was like, actually, I know this is crazy. And then eventually it changed. So, all right, let's listen to it a little bit more.
A consensus among experts is rather often meaningful, right? So if you have the lone person who's going against the consensus, if 99% of the specialists in a field believe X, and you've got somebody believing Y, maybe somebody who is himself an expert, he has the right credentials. But certainly in the case of someone who isn't an expert and doesn't have the right credentials, it is more often than not the case that you're not in the presence of a lone genius who's just figured everything out on his own. You're very likely in the presence of somebody who's mistaken or a crank or otherwise has some incentive that is going undetected, and they're going against the mainstream for bad reasons. Now, that's not to say there's no such thing.
But here's the thing. It shouldn't be hard then for the mainstream to make counter arguments against the crank.
Yeah, should be pretty easy.
It would be relative. The thing about whoever Y is, the 1%, like at least what their job, even if they're not correct, is to at least raise the question so that the 99% can be like, oh yeah, we didn't think of that. Maybe we should test that out too. And then it either becomes part of mainstream, or in like Galileo's case or COVID's case or whatever the case may be, they're able to shift and say, okay, we got this wrong. This person brought up a good point. We didn't think about that because we're not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And you take some accountability and you're like, we retooled it. And like that person was partially right and partially wrong. And here's the new consensus, and then somebody else comes along. Like what? It's so baffling to me, these elitists, and this is why I don't like Sam Harris and folks like this who think like, oh, I'm all knowing. I'm so much better than you are. You plebes don't know how to read or understand things. It's so infuriating.
Another point that he made is like the consensus of the experts. Most of them, he talks about consensus being important, and sometimes I get it. It is important, but then there are political topics, and there is a thing that happens where if you disagree with the experts on certain things, they'll kick you out of the room. And then guess what? You're no longer this credentialed expert. And so, it turns out 9 out of 10 dentists really do agree that Sensodyne is best for your teeth. And then someone disagrees, and they kick him out.
He's no longer a part of Sensodyne.
It was going to be 8 out of 10, and then they kick that guy out, and they get another one that agrees, and they bring him in.
Yeah.
This happens when it comes to like puberty blockers. Trans stuff for kids. It comes along climate change. And all that same stuff with COVID too. Like they'll kick you out of the club and then say that the club all agrees on this thing.
I also think you need, when it comes to experts, we talked about this during COVID. One of the points I made during COVID, and I think this is true in any field really, because ask yourself, if you ask, let's say the experts of war are generals, okay?
Well, the actual physical aspects of doing a war.
So if you ask the generals whether or not we should go to war, I think the consensus is probably going to be, well, yeah, let's go to war, because that's their field of expertise. They know.
They're like, it turns out I think war would be the best way to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said this during COVID, which is like, okay, the health experts are going to say certain things, but I think you need like an amalgamation of experts in the room to say, okay, like, okay, sure, maybe for health-wise, that would be like specifically physical health. That might be the best remedy or course of action. But you need an economic expert in there saying, or probably a few of them, you need some Keynesians, you need some Austrians, you need like different schools of thought to say like, okay, well, like if you do that though, here's the downside. Like, you know, just so you need probably some addiction experts in there to be like, okay, well, you know, if you shut down the economy, alcoholism and substance abuse is probably going to skyrocket.
Like if it saves one child,
you have to have multiple disciplines of thought in the room.
Yeah.
To even try to have a constructive conversation, especially when you're making decisions that are going to affect millions of people.
Actually, when it comes to COVID, what I would like is for none of those people to have power over others to force them to do anything. And then I don't give.
That's the other question.
I don't care what those people think.
You need a moral expert.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, guys, all this is well and good and maybe even best for the masses. However, ask yourselves, is this the moral option? And I say nay.
Yeah, let's see
and then that person's at least heard. And in decorum, you'd write that down. You know, they'd take a reporter. They'd be like, this person said nay. They dissented. It's not moral. And so this entire conversation, and I'm no expert, but
of course not. You're just a podcaster.
This entire conversation just baffles me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like ego and pride get in the way of these folks. Like, you know, if I was asked to join whatever, I'm an expert in healthcare finance, let's say, I will claim that. So if I was asked, as I am, as a consultant, to come in and weigh these different options, especially when it comes to technology, I'll be like, hey, yeah, you know, technologically we could do this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. However, this might disrupt so many business processes that it might be it might not be advantageous for you to take this route. Let's talk to the business process experts. I know a little bit about it, and so I know how this could probably affect some different areas. Maybe this technology that we want to do in this particular financial part of healthcare might actually affect patient care and patient safety. So maybe we should bring in those people to make sure we're not killing people by instituting something that we want to do that even might be beneficial for that part of the process. But they don't want to do that. What my problem with these people is that all they care about is their expertise and their egos and their pride and being part of the consensus or whatever. And they don't care about any of that stuff.
I think what they care about right now is that they've decided that they are the experts on this war particularly, and he's decided that there is no argument against the way that this war, say Israel and Hamas, there's no argument against the way that it has been conducted. And so therefore, anyone who tries to argue against him on that is wrong and doesn't have the expertise level that he has and doesn't have the experience of the Israel tours that he has, and that just in any way possible, he's going to try and destroy them. But I mean, it
doesn't matter that 30,000 children have died.
That's Hamas's fault, and that's what people will come back with.
I can tell you don't know anything about this because it's Hamas.
Like it is Hamas that attacked Israel on October 7th. That is true, and you know they could have given up.
I mean, they even took responsibility for it.
They could have given up all the hostages, and probably not all of these civilians would have died. I think that's true as well. That doesn't mean that just gives you cover to just go ahead and kill everyone. You know, it's like, in Waco, the Branch Davidians, they could have let the kids leave the compound. They could have sent them all out.
Yeah.
So I get it. We started the fire and they all died. They all burned to death, and that's their fault. You know,
they claim we didn't start the fire.
They also claim they didn't start the fire, but maybe you didn't have to. Maybe you didn't have to do things the way that you did them. Maybe there could have been a peaceful solution eventually. I get it. They did wait them out for some time, but no, you didn't have to burn. You didn't have to burn everyone alive. Mm-hmm. Let's just agree with that. We just missed Waco Day, by the way. That was April 19th. That's the day the day they all died. It's pretty bad.
Reason number one, we should abolish the ATF.
Yeah, get rid of the ATF.
Yes. Yeah.
And let's go and get rid of the FBI at the same time, and that'd be pretty good. We're probably going to have to wrap it up for today. I'm sure we'll have numerous more stupid Douglas Murray clips to talk about. I think we get the idea here. I think what's important is that people are able to talk about these things. I don't think Douglas Murray is arguing for censorship. I don't think he's arguing that the government should come in and shut people down. Although we are in a bit of a dangerous time right now where the government is sort of doing some censorship when it comes to anti-Israel talk. So, that's a little bit dangerous. You got Trump tweeting out Murray's book, and you got the Trump administration going after people that are critical of Israel. Of course, those are people that aren't American citizens, and that's the only people. They're going to draw the line right there. Not going to go past that at all. And so I've it's not that we've never seen the government go too far when it comes to censorship before and go after American citizen speech. I'm sure they would never find ways to use that vast government bureaucratic apparatus to go after people that are American citizens that are critical of Israel.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't do that at all. I think it's important for people to talk about these things. I think it's important to also note that there are journalists who live in Gaza, if they're still alive. There are journalists that talk about the war from that point of view. There are journalists in Israel that don't agree with the way that Israel has conducted this war. There are plenty of people. You can't just say, well, this journalist right there, he went to Israel, and so therefore he's the expert on things. As Dave Smith said, there are plenty of people who have been there and agree with me, and plenty of people who have been there and agree with you. Like that. So this is a non-argument. This whole thing is a non-argument, It's troubling to see the way that some of these people are moving, and I think they're getting called out for it, and I don't think they're going to win. That's where I would go on that. I think there's some. I don't think it's all elitist people. I think it's people who want to protect war. I think they want to protect intervention, and they want to protect the military-industrial complex, and they want to protect our allies in Israel or whatever it is, and so they're going to push these ideas to protect war because it's important,
Yep.
It's good for them.
I think the other thing about this that I think really rubs people the wrong way that I'll finish on here is after COVID, when the CDC, when the experts came out and said to use a sweatshirt or bandana over your when healthcare professionals couldn't get proper PPE because they were out of it, and so they were telling nurses and doctors and stuff to get a bandana or wear a sweatshirt. When they had this virus that they didn't know really what was happening at the moment. This is still in the beginning when we didn't really know how bad this thing could have been, because it could have been bad. That's possible, even though it didn't turn out that way. And when you had these things that became like mandates, and the experts just kept pushing them, like social distancing and the vaccines and how they couldn't spread, the experts just kept pushing things that were not true.
And they would not admit when they were wrong either.
And they wouldn't admit that they were wrong. And after that, I love Jesus. He is risen. Happy Easter. But the experts, okay?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. If you're an expert, show me with data and facts. And I will make a determination on whether I believe you or not.
I think that
I don't have to trust you because you're an expert.
By the way, you also don't have to trust someone because they're not an expert. Just because they're giving you a contrarian opinion on Joe Rogan's show or whatever doesn't mean you need to listen to it and believe it immediately. I don't. Like I've listened to the Daryl Cooper episode, and I've listened to I've listened to Dave Smith and Scott Horton and all them, and I don't let their opinions or their thoughts on things run my life or anything like that. And I don't have I'm very careful about the way I let something sway my opinion until I've looked up some stuff for myself and went and read into it. Joe Rogan's got a lot of pretty convincing arguments about the moon landing to make out there. Yeah, I've heard him made some good arguments. But first off, I don't really care. But second, I'm like, okay, well, that's let me look into it myself. I guess sure, it's possible. Sure, it's possible. But everyone should.
Yeah, but you're smarter than the masses.
Yeah,
so
you should trust people to a point, and then not trust them, and then think, well, what is their incentive? to be talking about this? Or could they just be wrong? Could they just be a human being who got fixed on one side of the opinion, and they could be wrong about this? And just, I think this is up to individuals to make up their own minds about things and not be looking to people to steer us in certain directions. That's how I see all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right, last question from the group to round this out. This is for you, Nate. Where do you stand? I know you're not an expert, but where do you stand on the earth being flat?
I was going to make a dad joke, like right on top. Where do I stand on the earth being flat?
On top.
Right on top.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, clearly I'm just gonna have to look into it.
I would say clearly it's not flat. We have mountains.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen hills.
Yeah, that is
seen
not
hills before.
A flat surface.
For sure.
So
I've also, I feel like I've been on enough planes to look out there and see, that there's some curvature. So it's like I've been there. Maybe
that's just the firmament.
It's what they want. Well, the whole thing,
tricks on
the
your
window
eyes.
is just a screen that they want us to see anyway.
Exactly.
Like Silo.
All right.
That kind of thing.
You could ask questions just like that in the Fed Haters Club by going to joingml.com.
Mm-hmm.
So do that. Be part of the Fed Haters Club. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it around with everyone you know and everyone you don't know. Just walk the streets and say, listen to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
They're not experts, but they'll tell you what they think. So do that. Go to GodHatesFeds.com to be part of the live group or get your God Hates Feds merch in dice.
Yep.
Expert merchandise. These people know how to make shirts.
Yeah, they do. That's what they do.
So do that. Visit the links in the show notes to support the sponsors that support this show. And if you do all of that, we'll be back again tomorrow. Hope you have a good day and a good morning, Liberty.